Donald Trump's defense promises to appeal Judge Engoran's gag order sanction. They say that Trump has free speech, and if he wants to criticize the judge's clerk, he's free to do that, especially if she's whispering in his ear, dictating how the trial is supposed to go. And so we went through the trial in total yesterday on this segment, but today they're following up in the aftermath because the judge was there. He sanctioned Trump $10,000. He actually called Trump to the stand, put him on the stand, and asked him a bunch of questions about this, and then said, I don't believe you. I think you were talking about my court clerk. You were not talking about Cohen. Therefore, $10,000 sanction. Boom. Now, Trump later on in the day, after Alina Abba obliterated Michael Cohen on the stand, Trump just stormed out of the courtroom. He was furious, and he made a quick statement to the press and said, this is a rigged trial. And of course, we would be in concurrence with that. But then shortly thereafter, in fact, bright and early the next morning, Trump had several things to say about this. Before we jump into the trial activities, he posted several truths right back to back. And here's what he said. He said, bright and early, 7:05, he says, the radical left judge, who should not be handling the fake and fully discredited case brought against me by New York State AG. It should be handled by the commercial division, but should never have been brought. Fined me $10,000 yesterday under his so-called gag order. He is a judge that found me guilty before the trial even started and long before he had the real facts. Like Michael Cohen collapsing and choking yesterday under cross-examination and completely admitting that I did nothing wrong. He committed massive perjury at a level seldom seen on the stand before. It was like watching the end of the best Petty Mason episode, where the defendant breaks down and cries, yes, I did it, I did it, I did it. This case should be ended, says Trump. Now, but this judge and his, quote, boss, Letitia Peekaboo James, will never let that happen. He even refuses to accept our big win in the appeals court. It is a disgrace to the legal system in the state of New York. This is a rigged case. That's Trump, 7:05 in the morning. Shortly thereafter, just a couple minutes later, 7:28, he drops another one. The judge in the New York State AG case refuses to accept the overturning of his decisions by the appeals court. This is a first in the history of the state. He has gone crazy in his hatred of Trump. Also, their, quote, star witness, Cohen, just admitted his statements were all a big lie. He broke down in court. The radical left judge said he doesn't care. He's trying to protect racist AG Letitia James, who has no case, lost the appeal, but has a tyrannical and unhinged Trump-hating judge. She campaigned for AG on I will get Trump, and her face was spasming every time she gave a lecture about Trump being illegitimate. Says I will get Trump long before she knew anything even about me. This is judicial misconduct coupled with prosecutorial misconduct, and somebody from the state of New York must step in and stop this complete and total miscarriage of justice. And then, just about an hour after that one, he dropped another one. He said the Attorney General case against me in New York State just lost its star witness. Sleazebag former attorney Michael Cohen, he was disbarred for lying and more, exclamation point, who admitted to lying in this case and clearly stated that I did nothing wrong. The unhinged judge, a highly political and fully biased Trump hater, refused to dismiss this hoax of a case and has lost all credibility. Likewise, he refuses to accept the decision of the appeals court, a first in New York. He should be ashamed of himself for having ruled against me before the trial even started and for not dismissing this rigged witch hunt now that the facts are known and that their star witness has been totally discredited, admitted to lying in court. It is a travesty of justice for all to see. Businesses are fleeing the least business-friendly state in the nation, and racist Attorney General Letitia James should focus on record-setting murder and other violent crimes, something she cares or knows nothing about. Fired up this morning. And then, about an hour after that one, we have the last one from Trump before we get to the trial. And this is, I think, important, okay? This is Trump's free speech, and I think he's exercising it, right? And we've said this before. Now, you may not really agree with some of the things that he's saying or how he's phrasing it, and that's fine. And maybe his attorneys might advocate, hey, Trump, I'm going to comment down on some of these statements. Maybe they would, maybe not. But what we're talking about here is flexing maximum wingspan. You're actually puffing up like a peacock, okay? You know what? My free speech rights are being violated. I'm going to exercise them to the maximum effect possible. You're going to try to take my free speech right? Watch this, buddy. And so we're watching where these boundaries are and what crosses the line because Chutkan gagged him and he's now been sanctioned twice on this. And at some point, okay, I mean, it's really reasonable that a judge might hold him in contempt or sanction him or, you know, take his ability to leave away or take his ability to get on the internet away or something like that, right? We'll see. At some point, come to a head as we're about to watch. But he says this one, 9:59. Writer Hagerman, using a colorful word for her first name, of the failing New York Times wrote almost her entire fake story today about the Trump-hating judge's gag order They love to silence me, and that is a fact. Rather than the racist Attorney General's star witness choking like a dog on the witness stand, Perry Mason, and admitting that I never asked him to do anything wrong, which is what Cohen did admit. He also admitted that he lied to Congress under oath. Again, brand new charges, right? And that's the thing. That's why we think Michael Cohen, and we were just reading from a very nicely crafted Twitter thread, but we still sort of, don't have the actual transcript of what happened there. But that was what the Trump lawyers were so smiley about that we caught yesterday, is Cohen basically admitted that he lied again. And we thought, was that the one that he got convicted for? Like, did he admit that he lied to Congress and he's already been convicted on that one? He's already been charged and that's done? Or did he make a new admission to lying to Congress again in order to save his credibility in this trial? Because it was either you're lying then or you're lying now. And he said, well, I'm lying then. And we asked the question, well, when was that exactly? Because do those statute of limitations still apply? Like, can the U.S. Department of Justice still prosecute him for those crimes if he just lied to Congress, relatively recently? And then he came back and he's like, no. I'm lying now, not then. But I'm not lying now. It's just very confusing, right? And so they were caught. They were smiley as can be. So that means they no longer have a witness or a case. And she also failed to report that the Trump-hating judge refuses to respect or accept the appeals court decision reversing him, a first. Says Hagerman should focus her energies on corrupt prosecutors and judges whose hatred and bias is so great that they are unable to make fair and reasonable decisions. New York is crime-ridden and dying, but I will save it in 2024. Can't come too fast. So, fired up. Right. Now, that is the preface for what's happening in court today. Now, Trump was not in trial today, but that's the language, okay? That's what we saw on Truth. And then we get actually into the courtroom, and reporting for us today is Klasfeld. Adam Klasfeld, he's over at Klasfeld Reports on the X platform, and I'd encourage you to give him a follow if you're interested in this type of work. He says, all right, everybody, good morning. Trump and Michael Cohen have gone. They're not in the courtroom anymore. So the courtroom thinned out for the ongoing civil fraud trial, but there are big witnesses ahead today, and we'll see who they are. But before we get even into the witnesses, we have a little bit of some fireworks at the start of the day, because we just had the gag order, we just had the $10,000 fine, we just heard from Trump. Here's what happens. Trump's attorney, Christopher Key, stands up. Your Honor, before we begin proceedings today, I'd like to call the court's attention to something that happened yesterday. Your Honor, you sanctioned my client for violating a gag order, and I just want to challenge that, Your Honor. I'd like to reopen that matter, actually, because I want to reassure the court that what my client, who he was referring to, was Michael Cohen. He was not talking about your clerk. That's why he said, I've had the chance to review the record last night, and I went over it, so I'd like to revisit this. He said that Michael Cohen was partisan, okay, not your clerk. So just so you're aware, okay, he was not talking about your clerk. I just want to be clear about that. But I want you to know this, Your Honor. However, even if he were talking about your clerk, Trump is entitled to comment on her, which was the point we made yesterday. Yeah, he can say whatever he wants about her. Why not? By the way, let me back up on that. He can say whatever he wants about her within the confines of the law. Okay, he can't threaten her. He can't call for attacks on her. He can't harass or intimidate her. These are all already crimes. There's already rules against that. So we don't need to come up with some new concoction rules so that the judge can protect the legitimacy of the institution against external criticism. That's the point of free speech, is to be able to criticize the institution. So if the judge says, well, you can criticize me, but you can't criticize my clerk or this courtroom, or you can't criticize anything like that, that is a limitation on Trump's speech. So Key says, Your Honor, he is entitled to comment. And in fact, this violates the First Amendment. He says Trump observes the clerk writing notes on the defense arguments. He's sitting here along with everybody else in this courtroom, and he's watching her taking notes when we're writing. She's your clerk. What is she doing, like helping you? So he's allowed to comment on that. Wouldn't you want that to be the case? If there's something nefarious going on, don't you need a pressure relief valve so that you can comment on the thing that's problematic? Transparency is the best. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Let us talk about it so that we can all see it. So, Your Honor, she's writing notes when we're doing our cross-exam or whatever. He says everybody can observe the law secretary on the bench. Okay, and we can all see her up there. There's no attempt to shield that public fact. He says, Your Honor, this is ridiculous. My client has free speech rights, and I just want you to know, if you don't lift this order, our intention is to appeal this order, and I ask for permission to photograph the empty bench if the order is not lifted. He says, I'm going to file an appeal, and I'd like to take my camera out right now and photograph this, because I'm going to file it in my appeal. I'm going to say, here's what Donald Trump was talking about. I went back, I listened to the transcript, I talked to the reporter, whatever the attorney did. This is what he says. I think he was talking about Cohen. You say not. So in my appellate memorandum that I'm going to submit, I want a photograph of the court if you don't lift this up. And the judge is sitting there, oh gosh, he's complaining about this. And now Keyes, Trump's lawyer, he's wrapping up his speech, and guess what happens? He looks over at New York Attorney General and the government prosecutors from the civil division, and he says, you know what, Your Honor, by the way, these prosecutors are violating CDC guidelines, don't you know? They're not even wearing masks here. And yesterday, we had a big argument about this, and we had to close court down on Monday because somebody in their office got sick. And so now they're in this courtroom, and they're infecting the rest of the courtroom, and they're not even putting masks on, Your Honor, so why don't you tell them to put a mask on? And the New York Attorney General responds, and she says, that's not true. We are following CDC guidelines. In fact, here's the rule. Maybe you should look it up. Go to CDC. It says if you test negative and follow your own guidelines, right? So I'm not going to repeat this. If you test for something, you no longer have to wear a mask, okay? She shoots it back over to Keese. So they don't have their masks on anymore. Wow. Check your CDC guidelines for whatever the official rule is. Don't trust a government prosecutor, okay? Trust me. So they're fighting about masks now. Disgusting prosecutors. And so here Adam says, well, none of the lawyers on either side is wearing a mask today. Well, of course not. I mean, Trump's lawyers are healthy and they, nice, good-looking people. So Adam Klasfeld says, reporting, he continues, he says, the New York Attorney General's counsel, Andrew, who's probably sitting in front of the bar while Tish is sitting in the back, he defends the gag order. He says, Your Honor, Trump can't say whatever the heck he wants, okay? The First Amendment has limits. He says, by the way, Judge Chutkan also imposed a gag order. So do you see what's happening here? So Chutkan relied on his gag order, which was very narrow. She issued a second gag order, which was much broader. And then the government in the original case can come back and say, see, a federal judge issued a gag order, so you should issue one too. And it'll probably be broader than what the original one was. So it's always the first domino, and then the rest of them just go. Chutkan also issued one, even though hers was based on yours, Engoran. So Keese continues. Trump's lawyer says, Your Honor, it's not naming anyone, okay? It's not a post on the website. It's not a disparaging comment. He didn't say anything about anybody's name. And even assuming he was talking about your law clerk who's whispering in your ear, Judge, your Schumer's girlfriend, Keese says Trump has a legitimate basis to comment on this because it is her role in the proceeding. Like, the judge can't sit there and then have like 25 clerks around him, all feeding him information, and then say, you can't comment on all of those people because I'm the judge and I'm getting independent information, and how dare you criticize my staff? What? But what if your staff is the problem here? So Engoran says, anybody can run for president. I have a right to protect my staff. And I don't think that's impinging on anybody's First Amendment rights to protect my staff, which you have to buy that premise that anything that Trump said about her is not a danger to her. I mean, we haven't seen any causation for that. It's just a flawed premise, but the judge is making crap up. So Engoran, on soliciting his clerk's active input, he says, this is how I do it. I listen to her, okay? And I think it's certainly within my purview and my discretion to have an aide who can actually tell me how to do this. He says, I'm quoting George W. Bush when he said, I am the decider. And he says, by the way, I do not consider this trial political at all, just so you know, which is nice that he doesn't think that. So then apparently he issues a written order. He says he explains why he believes Trump's testimony rings hollow and untrue. He posted this, and this is a portion of it. He said, Donald Trump testified under oath that he was referring to Cohen. However, as the trier of fact, I find this testimony rings hollow and untrue. The Oxford English Dictionary defines alongside as close to the side of or next to. Witnesses do not sit alongside the judge. They sit in the witness box, separated from the judge by a low wooden barrier. And further, Donald Trump's past statements demonstrate that him referring to Michael Cohen directly by his name or by a derogatory name, but in all circumstances, he's unambiguous, making it known he's talking about Cohen. And moreover, the language that Trump used on 1025 mirrors the language he used in public statements on 10-2, where he inappropriately and unquestionably spoke about my, quote, principal law clerk, stating this rogue judge is a Trump hater, and the only one who hates Trump more is his associate up there, the person who works with him, and she's screaming into his ear. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to comment on that because of the person who's apparently influencing the process? If you're allowed to criticize the process, which you are, why can't you criticize the person who's barking into the ear of the judge, who's guiding the process? Seems pretty obvious. So using imprecise language as an excuse to create plausible ambiguity about whether Trump violated this order is not a defense. As a trier of fact, I find that Trump was referring to my law clerk and he intentionally violated this order. So therefore, I'm going to impose a $10,000 fine, and Trump must post proof of payment to the New York Lawyers Fund for Client Protection, signed by the judge. Now, that's all done and taken care of. He affirms it. He affirms the sanctions order. He says, I reviewed the remarks at the presser, and he argued, Trump's lawyer, he says, Your Honor, that's ridiculous. He says, Trump spoke about Cohen right after referring to the partisan sitting alongside the judge. There was a clear transition, the judge says, before that, so I think he was changing his thought. All right, so the judge is just splicing Trump's words to match what he wants to do, which is issue a sanction. So now he says, I'm done talking about this, all right? Next person's coming in. We bring in Sherry Dillon. Government prosecutors call her. Now, she's a tax lawyer who apparently worked for Trump, appeared at a widely publicized press conference. Now, she comes up, takes the stand. You promise to tell the truth? Yes, I do. Dillon rattles off her education, career path. So the New York Attorney General, this guy's name is Lewis, he comes up and he starts off his questioning. Tell me what you did at the Trump Organization. Dillon says, well, I did a bunch of things there. I provided tax advice. I was reviewing contracts. I was assisting with government investigations and government inquiries. And I did a bunch of stuff. I actually interacted with a host of people regularly, a lot of people. People like Jason Greenblatt, Alan Garten, Jeff McConney, Alan Weisselberg, and others. Did you ever work with Mr. Trump, the ex-president? She says, yes, I did, but not as often as some of the others. She says, I spent more time with Trump's children, people like Eric and Ivanka Trump. And that's what I do. And so can you tell me, Miss Dillon, what a conservation easement is? Sounds like you might know what that is. Can you tell me more about it? She says, well, it's a topic that's important to understanding allegations surrounding Seven Springs. And so some background on this. So Seven Springs apparently is Eric Trump's role in it. So some property and conservation easements, blah, blah. They ask about this letter. They say, all right, so Dillon, on September 27, 2016, Schneiderman, the New York Attorney General at the time, so the government bureaucrat who was before Tisch, back in 2016, Trump's announcing he's running. The election's right around the corner in September. Schneiderman sends Dillon a letter from the Charities Bureau. They say New York has been investigating the Trump Foundation, an inquiry that ultimately led it to be fined and shuttered, right? So this is their announcement about that. So Trump is running for office. They're trying to take him out back then. So he then shows her the letter. Here's the inquiry. Do you remember this? Yeah. What'd you do when you received this inquiry from the prior Tisch? What did you do about it? She says, well, then I went and I spoke with this guy, Jeff. I talked to Alan Weisselberg. I talked to others. Trump's lawyers jump up. Objection, Your Honor. This line of questioning, where is this going, by the way? And she's also getting very close to attorney-client privilege. She's starting to ask about these other people, and many of them might be lawyers. And so here, she might be crossing the line, and so they're litigating this. You know, they're saying, hey, what can she ask about? What can't she ask about? Judge says, you're overruled, Trump's defense, obviously. Sit down and shut up. She hasn't crossed the line yet. They go back to testimony. Trump's lawyer jumps up again. Your Honor, objection, relevance here. What are they talking about? Government says, well, Your Honor, we were talking about the prior witness and the insurance underwriter, talking about that there were no outstanding claims. And what we're trying to show here is that Trump knew at the highest levels of the Trump organization that this wasn't true. We're trying to say that Trump said that they were claiming that there were no outstanding investigations, but they knew that this letter from Tisch 1.0 came in, and they want to know that that was at the highest level. So in other words, Trump wasn't being honest when he said, no, we're not under investigation, because they were. So the judge says, listen, you guys, to me, this case is not just about financial statements being submitted to insurance companies, okay? He says, I don't care really about the documents or the evidence. It's about whether the defendants committed fraud, which was persistent and pervasive, right? So he's already made his decision, just so we're clear. I think it's completely relevant. He says, you know, it might not be the, quote, heart of the case, but it's in the case, so I'm letting it in. So the evidence in the line of questions are permitted, obviously. It's like, whatever. Is it bad against Trump? Whatever. With that, the New York Attorney General Counsel then is like, perfect, thanks, Judge. They introduce the notice of violation, walks right in. You want me to even like lay foundation for it? Nah, whatever, get it in. So Dillon testifies, said, well, if you know, I don't really remember what I did exactly when I got that letter, but what I would have done is I would have given notice to Trump and then the counsel, Jason Greenblatt. So when they got this warning from Tisch 1.0, this is what I probably would have done. So they have a letter. She says, well, looks like I did respond to the Charities Bureau on 10/7/2016, getting real close to the election. And so that letter gets entered into evidence. So, but you did respond. Yeah, I guess I did. Okay, no objection. It states that the Trump organization, or Trump, maybe himself, issued a directive to the foundation responding to the notice on October 3rd, the first business day after the notice. Trump issued a directive to the foundation responding to the notice on 10/3. Don't know exactly what that means. Let's see if we get more information about it after the lunch break. They go to lunch, cram down some food, feeling a little full, a little tired. Doesn't matter. We're back. Let's get to it. Dillon's testimony continues. Now, I want to show you some emails about this conservation easement project at the Trump International Golf Club. Miss Dillon? Yeah, okay, I'm looking at it. Now, I want to ask you about this email from 2012. It looks like you got this email, and it says that Mr. Trump has reviewed this layout and thought it can work for our purposes. Mr. Trump reviewed this layout and thought it can work for our purposes. Do you know what Trump is talking about, this layout? No, I can't recall what Trump is referring to here. This email's more than a decade old. Now, oh my gosh. Listen to this. So the New York Attorney General Counsel, Lou, okay, the government prosecutor, notes that Don Jr. is copied in the email and he's part of the chain, right? So she says, I have no idea what's in it. What could it be referring to? It's a decade old. I have no idea. He says, well, Don Jr.'s been copied there. You see that? She says, yeah. He says, so why don't you just speculate for us? he asks her to speculate. The defense goes, objection, because it calls for speculation. And he's literally calling, it's like he's asking her to commit an objection, like literally, like he's saying, can you please speculate? Even though the objection is objection, speculation. And so the defense says objection, judge says, sustained. He has to grant one for the defense. Unbelievable. So they keep going. She can't remember anything. Their emails are decades old. He pulls out another email. In October 16th, 2014, they say, Dylan, Cushman appraiser Brian Dilley told you that the numbers come in around 27, 28 million for the driving range property, and that's about 1.7 to 1.75 million per lot as is, and so on. Now, talking about time and risk and all this stuff, and at some point this goes bad, right? So this attorney's having a difficult time here, this government prosecutor. Wonder why Tish isn't doing this. Maybe she should tag in, probably not. But she says, Your Honor, we have the right to treat her as a hostile witness. So this is going a little bit bad. And the government says that's warranted because she's a former attorney for the Trump organization. Okay, so she's the lawyer. That's why we get to attorney-client privilege stuff. Now, the word hostile doesn't necessarily mean antagonistic. He says the Trump family, Cliff Robert, objects to the designation, noting that she's the former attorney, okay, not the current attorney. Engoran says that, I'm going to go with this designation. We're going to treat her as hostile. And they wrangle over a piece of evidence regarding a conservation easement being followed. And she finally says, he's trying to hit her. So like, isn't it true? And she says, well, I'm a lawyer, okay? I'm precise. I get paid to be precise. I get paid a lot to be precise. That emphasis. A lot, man. I get paid like crazy amounts, man. You don't even believe it. That's how precise I am. Dylan's remark there was in reference to being pressed about the characterization of a piece of evidence. Says, I'm not trying to quibble with you. 15-minute recess. Adam refreshes on coffee. Now, we get back into questioning. The New York Attorney General once again prompts Dylan to review the golf club evaluations of Trump's. Says, do you recall any conversations, Dylan, about the appraisals at the Trump organization? She says, no, it's been 10 years. No, I don't remember. Do you remember whether you ran any decisions with respect to Trump's National Golf Club past Eric Trump? She says, some decisions, yes, but not all decisions. Well, Miss Dylan, I want to show you this email that you sent to Cushman, this appraiser called David, about the valuation of this other property. You sent this email October 2013. It says, I spoke to Eric and he's aware that the more supportable value at this point is about 45 million. That's the email. And so does that sentence accurately reflect one of your conversations with Eric Trump? And the defense says, objection, Your Honor. Attorney-client privilege, okay, that's between her and the client. Why is this even being discussed? Engoran says, overruled, it's relevant. Directing, please answer. Is that a fair summary? She says, I have no recollection of the conversation. I don't know if there's more of the conversation. I don't know if there's less to the conversation. She says, this is a conversation from 10 years ago. I don't know. Not a good witness for Tish. They called her in there. That was their witness. Then they turned and treated her as hostile. Then she doesn't get anything out of them. I don't remember anything. Trial adjourns for the day. Dylan will be back on the stand tomorrow. So shout out to Dylan for not buckling to these weaklings and just saying whatever they want to be said. She doesn't remember. She tells him, I don't remember. Sherry Dillon in the house, tax lawyer for Trump. So she'll be back tomorrow and we'll be here to unpack whatever unfolds, my friends. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing this channel and inviting people to come and check out what they're doing to Trump behind closed doors as we try to bring the trials to life and uncover more of their nefariousness. Thank you for subscribing as we do.